Hi guys, welcome to another episode of Clangin and Bangin with Mikey, episode 258. And good morning, happy Sunday. Christmas is this week, so it's cool, right? Last week took the week off because of a family reunion. So there's that. And that was fun. That was great. Being around a bunch of people that majority of them I haven't met. And it was interesting because some of them were looking at me like, you know, you know, that look. And I'm like, ironically, because my grandfather had 9 half siblings, right? And so out of 10 total. So out of 10, 8 of them had kids, and like 8 of them had like 5 or 6 kids, and they all had like X amount of kids and whatnot. So it was like it was for a reunion for like, the third generation and on. So, and one of my aunties was asking me, she's like, "Oh, well, how old are you?" Like 31, 32. I was like, "Oh no, auntie, I'm 37." She's like, "Oh, you look good for your age." And she's like, "You married? You have kids?" It's like, no, like no kids, not married. And she was like, "What? Why?" And I'm like, "Oh, well, that's a good question. I don't know, cause I don't know." And and the whole point of this episode is sometimes, man, you can't give energy to the past when the present is there. And sometimes you gotta recognize when the present wants nothing to do with you too. What I'm trying to say is that you can't have both feet in a different time space. You have to have it right underneath you. You can't be entertaining something that happened a year ago, 5 years ago, whatever it is, right? And you can't be entertaining something that doesn't want to be entertained by you presently either, which is fine too. There's nothing wrong with that. It's nothing wrong with recognizing, like, yeah, okay, I thought this was in the summer, but it's not. Especially when you start, when the text messages and the phone calls, and it's like when they stop being replied to, whatever it is, it's like, take that hint, you know, or take that time to be like, you know what, X, Y, and Z, because I've had people text me, and I hit them back a week later, but like, look, X, Y, and Z, I just need some time to think, and and it's true. It's like, don't let nobody rush you into having a conversation that you don't want to have just yet. Create that boundary and understand that boundary is for you to operate safely. You know, boundaries is not just for another person; it's for you too. I'm a big advocate for that, man. It's like not rushing in to have a conversation with you, not rushing in because you feel a certain way. It's like, I'm gonna tell you exactly what it is, and then I'm gonna be like, okay, cool. But hit me back when you're ready. And if you don't hit me back, that's fine. I'm not one of them dudes that's gonna sit there and wonder what the fuck it was. I'm not one of them dudes that's gonna be like, oh yeah, well you didn't. Like, no, I'm not doing all that. It's like, I'm not. Like, I've had people tell me that, oh yeah, so and so said, like, well, you didn't tell me what I did wrong. I'm like, bro, we all grown adults, bro. Like, you don't have to be told what you did wrong. You know, like, you may ask, is there anything that you upset about? And if they don't say anything, then obviously there's no issue. And Tom Holland had this quote that he said once. He's like, well, if you don't have my phone number, you don't know me well enough to have a problem with me. And it's interesting, man, because like when I say that to people, it's true. It's like, what do I look like getting bothered by you? What do I look like getting bothered by somebody who I don't have a phone number for? You know? And when I say that to people, it's true. It's like, you don't know me well enough to have a problem with me. You think you have a problem with me, but there is no problem. But anyway, getting back to the family reunion, it was fun. It was 2 days. It was in Maui, and so it was fun to get away. Fun to experience a different island as an adult. You know, the last time I've been to the mall was probably maybe middle school, high school, something. Yeah, and it's been a minute, and it was always interesting to see the excuse me. It's always interesting to see how another island operates and everything too, and yeah, and this is the first time I've seen Maui, especially Lahaina, um, post the fires. Like I remember being in college and going to Maui with my family members, my grandmother and everybody. And it's like Front Street was just so vibrant, so lively, you know? And it's like, you go over there now and it's like, bro, there's like nothing there. You know, I mean, they're slowly rebuilding, you know? But all the landmarks that were there before, they're not there anymore. You know? And it's 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 sad, you know, but at the same time, it's definitely something that makes you appreciate the history. You know, makes you appreciate everything that a place has to offer, and that's where I'm at, man. It's like a lot of people will not necessarily take it for granted, but they won't appreciate something until it's gone. And which brings me to my next point. Know how to appreciate somebody before they're gone. You know how to appreciate, their presence, what they do for you, what you do for them. Overall, just realize that you're in the presence of somebody who actually wants to see you, see you be better. Those of you guys who know me personally, you guys know that I'm a very, very strong individual when it comes to accomplishing your goals. I don't care what it is, But the one thing I would not stand around and tolerate is people who talk about what they're gonna do. Because in my experience, personally, people who do that end up not doing nothing at all. And I used to have a friend of mine, and I've talked about him multiple times in different episodes. I used to have a friend of mine who used to always complain about her job, complain about this, complain about that, yada, yada, yada. And it got to a point where I was like, you're doing all this complaining, but you're doing, but when you have the opportunity to change it, you don't, you end up keep sabotaging yourself. Why is that? And one of my other good friends brought it up. He said, bro, like, you just got to stop bringing it up, because she don't want it, She doesn't want it bad enough, man. She complains about it, but at the end of the day, she keeps showing you that she doesn't want it. So it's like, you got to learn to stop bringing it up. And that same friend, he was right, because you don't want to be around people who talk about what they're going to do. You don't want to be around people who do that because it's pointless. Like, okay, cool. You're gonna do X, Y, and Z. Great. When are you gonna do it? When are you gonna get out of your own way and accomplish your goal? And that to me is like, when people talk about their goals, I automatically get scared for them. Because they're telling everybody what they're gonna do, not realizing that it takes actual work to get it done. They're telling everybody what it is, and it's like, okay, but what are you really doing about it? I got people who, for years, and these are best friends that I grew up with, right? They talked about going to school, doing X, Y, and Z. getting degrees, getting certifications, and damn near 20 years later, well, literally 20 years later, they haven't done any of it. And they're like, then you want to sit there and make excuses only, but you can't. Yeah. At a certain point in time, bro, you got to realize that you're the cause of your own failures. Now, I'm not saying that you're a failure, but you're the cause of you not accomplishing your goals. You know, some of the smartest people I know grew up in public housing, grew up in poverty. Some of the stupidest people I know had all the resources given to them, and they didn't have to work for anything. You know, and it's true. I think that's the most crazy thing when people don't realize that it's up to you to get shit done. Like, don't talk about it, you know. Don't tell everybody what you're gonna do. Just slowly putting the work in, you know. And it's like you don't want to be that person that just talks and talks and talks and talks and talks. Because after a while, people will be like, nah, this person's full of shit. And you know what? They're right. It's like, why would you want to be around somebody who just does that all the time? Yeah? Why would you want to be around somebody who just doesn't get the fact that they're that they're the problem? That's what's that's what's disheartening to me. It's like, I used to tell one of the younger brothers I grew up with. I used to tell his younger brother all the time. I was like, bro, if you want to play ball, go to a JC, get your, whatever it is, bro. Get your certification, whatever it is. It's like, because he was like he's maybe 5'1", 5'2", really short dude, right? And I was like, bro, if you want to hoop, go to a junior college. It was like, if you want to get your, mechanical, certification, go off and do that. But go off and do it. Don't listen to you. I told him point blank, don't listen to your older brother. Because what advice is he gonna give you? He's never done what you're doing. So what's that tell you? You know? He's like, what? He's like, yeah. He's like, me and your brother may have been best friends growing up. He may be your older brother, but he hasn't done anything. Like, look around you, bro. Like, you don't want to be that dude, 10, 15, 20, 30 years later, still in the same spot. You don't. Like, you don't want to be that dude where you're just like, oh, I didn't do X, Y, and Z because X, Y, yada. No, bro. You didn't do X, Y, and Z because you couldn't get out your own way. Excuse me. That's what that is, man. It's like, if you can't get out of your own way, you have no right to tell anybody else how to conduct themselves, how to live their life. Because it's simply put, they're gonna be like, well, what the fuck did you do? Like, if you're so like, X, Y, and Z, yada yada yada. If you're all this, how come you struggling? And you know what? They're right for asking that question. Because why would somebody else ever take advice from somebody else who's never done what they're doing? I have this analogy that I use, man. It's like, like me asking somebody else something that they haven't done is like me telling Kobe Bryant how to shoot a jump shot. Kobe gonna look at me like, nigga, what? Like, I'm Kobe Bryant. I do this shit for a living. Like, this is what I do. And it's true. Yeah. I just think that boundaries are important. Knowing what you want to do is important. And going after what you want to do is extremely important, because the only person holding you back is you. If you can't get out of your own way, and if you can't become the version of yourself that you want to become, then that's on you. That's on that's nobody else's fault. That's nobody else's kuliana. That's nobody else's issue. It's yours. Um, I know people who talk about going back to school, getting a master's, getting a professional degree, and okay, like, okay, cool, go off and do that, but do it for you. Stop telling people what you're gonna do. Stop telling people what you got going on, because at the end of the day, it doesn't matter. You know, at the end of the day, it's you versus you. It's always you versus you. And sitting there at that family reunion last weekend, that's a thought that kind of stayed in the forefront of my mind. And my uncle, quick backstory, right? Like, they were planning this shit for 20 years, and this shit never really came to fruition. And it just happens that one of my uncles was telling me, like, yeah, bro, like, like we lost a lot of cousins, and in the last couple of years, they lost like 6, 7, 8 people, because of the fires and because people die, health issues, all that stuff, right? So it was like, but imagine all the history that went with them too. Imagine the shit that they saw. Imagine the shit that they would have been able to tell me, So, and one of my uncles was telling me, he's like, yeah, like, all you young boys and everything too, like, because he was talking to my cousins and everything too. He's like, hey, like we'll help you guys do X, Y, and Z, but it's like, it's up to you guys to keep this here going forward. I was like, okay, cool, because it is. And we need to do that because, number one, history is important, and number two, family is important too. And it is what it is, bro. And so, yeah, I mean, it's somebody was asking me, like, oh, like, yeah, like, how many annual reunions is this? And I'm like, yo, this is the first one. So, I had like maybe like 100 people there, and that was not even the entire immediate family. So that was interesting too. So, because it was all, my grandfather's line and his siblings and their kids and their kids' kids and all that other shit, right? So, but it was definitely interesting, man. It was definitely something that was. I'm definitely gonna keep in touch excuse me, with people. So, speaking of keeping in touch, I was having a conversation with somebody the other day, and I said, well, you gotta recognize when you're the only one keeping in touch. You gotta recognize when you're the only one putting effort in, and if that effort starts to become one-sided, then just leave it alone. I mean, I can understand holidays and whatnot too, but I'm talking when the phone calls and text messages don't go answered for 2, 3 days, 2, 3, 4 days, whatever it is. And the last thing you want to do is to sit there and be talking to yourself in somebody's text messages. People gotta learn to give other people space. Just because you want to have the conversation right then and there, it don't mean it gonna happen, bro. Like, we're not children. It's like, you can't force us to talk. It's not gonna happen. And I think that's something that a lot of people don't realize, man. It's like, yeah, you can miss somebody, you can do X, Y, and Z, but you don't have to communicate with them daily. Just like when I told my ex, when we broke up, I was like, yo, it's like, I'm not saying that you can't call or you can't text, because you can, but please don't be expecting me to be at your beckoning call. I'm not gonna be that individual who drops what he's doing just because you call or you text. I might hit you back, the same day. I might hit you back in a few hours. Hell, I might hit you back in a week. but you don't get to take up space the way you were taking up space in my life because you show that you don't want it. And when it goes back to boundaries, I know I always say this, but boundaries are important. You have to understand that boundaries are not just for the other person, but they're for you too. And sometimes you have to look at the situation and you have to look at the context of it. And you have to realize, okay, like, is this really worth my time? Or is this person trying to monopolize my time? You know, because you can't move forward into the present if your past still has access to you, right? And I think that's where a lot of people are at, you know, where they don't have the astute ability to, or the logical pathways to understand that, okay, this isn't working. No, we can't go backwards. No, we can't be friends. No, we can't do X, Y, and Z because of the boundaries. And a lot of people get fucked up, you know, because of that. And I simply put it like this. Let's say you're dating somebody, right? And then you got your ex-lover calling you, you know, texting you, whatever it is. How do you explain that to the new person? How do you explain to somebody else, oh yeah, like the person calling me and texting me, you know, we were once intimate. You know, we seen each other in our birthday suits. We've done X, Y, and Z. You don't. Because that tells the other person, like, yo, obviously you haven't moved on. Because if you had moved on, you wouldn't be still letting your past have access to you in your present. And I think a lot of people will do that. Same friend from earlier. I remember she said something, oh yeah, so-and-so with you, you know, stop texting me as soon as I, you know, posted my boyfriend on social media. It's like no, I was like, no, like he stopped texting you because he knew there wasn't a shot. He had no intentions of ever stopping of trying to get back together with you. The only difference was that he knew that you had no boundaries. I heard something once that made sense. It said, comfort looks like peace when the boundaries are weak. And it took me a while to think about it. I'm like, yo, it's like comfort looks like peace when the boundaries are weak. And I thought about it. I'm like, yo, because what do people do when shit gets rough? They run back to the shit that makes them comfortable. They run back because they don't have any boundaries for themselves. And sometimes you have to realize that in order to get better, you have to start working on the problem. And the problem isn't always the other person. The problem is this person staring you back in the mirror. All right, y'all, this is 23 minutes of your life that y'all won't get back. Hope y'all keeping it 4Ps, private player, positive and pushing. I'll see y'all next week. And if I don't do a Christmas episode, I want to wish everybody who watches this a Merry Christmas and everything else. And I think that's important because family is important. Being loved and, you know, loving people is important. And overall, man, just being a good person, y'all. All right, y'all. See y'all next week. I love y'all. Peace. Like I always say, know your worth because you're better than what you are. All right, y'all. Later.